You know that media is very busy right now with elections. Thank you for coming and allowing us this opportunity to focus on one issue, which is Philippines-China economic cooperation, especially in light of some issues regarding our bilateral relations. We have four resource persons for today. We invited Deputy Governor of the Central Bank, Mr. Diwa Guinigundo, to give us his views on issues related to bilateral economic cooperation. We're still waiting for Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino of the Department of Finance, whom will also talk about the revenue generation aspect of our bilateral economic cooperation. Mr. George Seal of the Federation of Filipino-Chinese Chambers of Commerce will give us insights on how this group is helping enhance economic cooperation. And Mr. Wilson Flores, economist of the Philippine Star and also the head of the Public Information Division of the Federation of Chambers of Commerce, will add to the discussion regarding what the Federation is doing to enhance overall economic cooperation between our two countries. We'll give a chance to Deputy Governor Diwa Guinigundo to give an opening statement on what he thinks is the expected benefits from enhanced cooperation with China at this point of our economic development, especially in light of the infrastructure program of the Duterte administration, and also our participation in the Belt and Road project of President Xi Jinping of China. As we all know, the President attended this the second Belt and Road Forum in Beijing. The first was in 2017, the second just last month. And we expect this cooperation to be heightened somewhat in the remaining 3 years of the Duterte administration. So I'll give the floor to Deputy Governor Diwa Guinigundo to give an overall view of the situation right now.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Butch. I think our discussion can be contextualized in our broad objective to address the sustainability of the Philippine economic growth story. We have been growing for the last 20 years, since the first quarter of 1999. That's 80 consecutive quarters. And a lot of this owed actually to 25 years of sustained policy and structural reforms that have translated into higher potential output of the economy. 5-10 years ago, our potential output or potential capacity was limited to between 4 to 4.5%. In the last 5 years, our potential output has grown to between 6.5% to 7%. This means that if in the past we were subjected to the so-called boom and bust, we grow today, tomorrow we contract. This is no longer the case in the last 20 years because we have been growing positively, consecutively in the last 18 consecutive quarters. Now, what we want to do is to sustain that growth story. For many middle-income countries, the challenge is to avoid the so-called middle-income trap. When an economy reaches 10,000 or 11,000 per capita income, the next thing is they experience flat economic growth for many years to come. Ito po yung middle-income trap. There are two reasons for this middle-income trap. One is aging or lack of sufficient infrastructure. Second is an aging population. With respect to the second reason, I don't think that is a problem. We are 107 million people today, and most of these are young, and the median age in the Philippines is 24 years old. So we do not have any problems of wage pressure, unlike in other more emerging, more advanced emerging markets like Thailand, for example, experiencing an aging population, or some other developed countries like Japan, for example. It is with respect to the first reason, the aging or lack of infrastructure that we want to address. Kaya bago pa man tayo dumating doon sa punto na wala na tayong infrastructure o kulang na tayo ng infrastructure, ngayon pa lang, we're trying to address this very large infrastructure gap. And the healthcare signs are very obvious. Mula sa amin hanggang dito, siguro mga 25 minutes kami. But that's only what? Less than 2 or 3 kilometers away from Annabel'S. Why? Because of traffic. Because of traffic bottlenecks. Because our infrastructure is just limited. Ito po yung ina-address ng ating gobyerno sa mga panahon ito. Okay. So, papasok ngayon dyan yung BRI, Belt and Road Initiative, which is driven by the People's Republic of China. Now, we need to recall that our trade and investment regime, our global trade and investment regime is multilateral. Okay? Kaya andyan po ang IMF, andyan ang World Bank, andyan po ang WTO to conduct trade and investment in a multilateral way. So, the underlying principle is one of cooperation. It is one of collaboration based on mutual interest, and this is defined by those global and international conventions. Okay. Ano po makukuha natin dun sa BRI? Well, BRI is it's an initiative not only that is land-based, but it is also meant to establish interconnectivity and interlinkages across maritime borders. So, ang Pilipinas, kahit hindi ho nakakabit yan doon sa mainland, kasama siya dahil doon sa nautical dimension ng Belt and Road Initiative. Yan po yung konteksto. Bilaterally, China is increasing in importance as far as the Philippines is concerned. First is merchandise trade. Noong 2018, out of 100% of our exports, 13% of our exports went to China. Ang ating ASEAN during that time was about 15%. So mahalaga pa rin yung intra-ASEAN trade natin relative to China. So kung meron ng problema sa China, one cushion, okay, is to continue to intensify and expand our intra-ASEAN trade. Okay? That is a counterweight to a possible slowdown in China, which according to the IMF's World Economic Outlook may show a slowdown from 6.4% in 2017 to 6.2, 6.3% in 2018. What about our imports? Our imports from our intra-ASEAN trade is about 25%. Sa China, is nearly 20%. So 10, 15 years ago, halos wala yan, both exports and imports. But today, China is increasing in terms of importance from the perspective of merchandise trade. What about investment? Yung pong investment, let's say foreign portfolio investment, maliit lamang po ang share ng China. Ang China is less than 1% of the total foreign portfolio investment. What are portfolio investments? Portfolio investments are those investments made by non-residents in our stock market, government securities, private securities, and of course those that are deposited in our domestic banking system. Yun po yung portfolio investment. What about foreign direct investment? Ganun din po. Hindi ganun kalaki ang ating nakukuha si China. In 2000, for the first, in 2018, about 2.7 billion, around 7% lamang ang galing sa China. Okay? So, but of course, over the next few years, given the aggressive participation of China in global investment activities, we should expect that that number will continue to increase. Now, another issue is in terms of external debt. Okay? May mga nagsasabi na baka tayo pumasok dun sa tinatawag na debt trap. Okay. What are the numbers? At the end of 2018, our external debt was about $79 billion. 79. Now, how much was China's debt? Or how much was our debt to China at the end of 2018? Less than 1 billion. 980 million to be exact. Now, may distribution mo yan. Short term, medium, and long term. Ang short term, which is basically related to trade, ito po yung short-term debt na laging iniikot. Ito po yung revolving trade credits. This is 520 million, okay, out of 980. Doon naman sa medium and long-term loans, ito yung lagpas ng 5 years, ito po ay 420 million. Yun po yung weight ng China. Okay. Now, of course, recently, marami po tayong nakitang participation ng China doon po sa ating infrastructure program. Basically, on power, construction, okay, yung roads and bridges, etc. Okay. Now, sinasabi, again, Assistant Secretary Lambino is here, they're saying that if we factor in all of those commitments and indications of interest of the Philippines for Chinese loans, aabot lamang yan ng 4 or 5%, no? By the end of 2022. So, pasok na lahat siya, ang contribution lamang doon ay magiging between 4 to 5%. I think the more important aspect here is that we have an existing law, Foreign Borrowings Act, which prescribes an elaborate system of processing foreign loans. First, you have the proponent, halimbawa, Department of Public Works, Department of Transportation. They are the proponents of this project. Now, they are the ones who will establish both the economic and the social viabilities of these projects. Pagkatapos yan po ay dadaan sa ICC. ICC is the Investment Coordinating Committee of the National Economic and Development Authority. Andiyan po, interagency yan. So you have the NEDA, you have the VSP, you have the Department of Budget and Management, the proponent agencies, the Department of Justice to ensure that all the legal provisions are above the law. Okay? Yan po ay pupunta ngayon sa Bangko Sentral for approval in principle. Approval in principle involves looking at the terms and conditions in terms of maturity, in terms of spreads, in terms of the other provisions. Okay? Pagkatapos niyan, balik yan sa ICC for the NEDA board. Pagkatapos negotiation with the creditors, pagka nagkaroon po ng natapos yung negotiation, goes back to the central bank for final approval. Okay? Titingnan po namin sa central bank yung monetary implications ng pong loan proposals na yun. What are those monetary implications? What is the implication of this loan to our balance of payments, to monetary aggregates? Will this result in the bunching up of maturities? So ito po ay tinitingnan sa International Operations Department ng Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas. Pag nakapasok na sa BSP yan, goes back to the DOJ, sa Department of Justice, to make sure, again, of the legality and constitutionality of those loans. Now, two more points before I end. Meron po tayong mga standard provisions doon po sa mga terms and conditions. Unang-una, there are no collaterals on any of the loan agreements signed by the Philippine government. Wala pong collateral siya. So, yung sinasabi na baka ang collateral natin, yung mga patrimony, national patrimony, wala po yun sa loan agreement. Second, meron tayong waiver of immunity. The waiver of immunity simply allows the creditor to bring us to court kung nagkaroon ng problema. But this is something that is standard for loan contracts between and among sovereigns. Okay? And in case of any issue or controversy, it is voluntary on the part of both the creditor and the debtor to go into arbitration. Thirdly, arbitral rulings, ano ba man ang maging rulings doon, are subject to the Philippine Constitution, our court system, and public policy. And finally, the Philippine government, of course, is managing our debt responsibly. Now, second point is about terms and conditions. Now, we can compare yung pong mga terms and conditions doon po sa, halimbawa, may sinasabi tungkol sa kaliwa at saka doon sa Chico Dam. Right. Ano po ang nominal interest rate doon? That's 2%. Okay? Doon po sa Japan, North-South Commuter Rail, ang equivalent na fixed US dollar rate, kapag ka-translate, kasi mahirap po natin pagkumparahin kapag ito in renminbi, in Japanese yen, in US dollar, in euro. So you have to compare apples and apples rather than apples and oranges. So if you translate everything in US dollar, yung pong China loan, 2%. And Japan, with respect to the North-South Commuter Rail, is 2.7. Yung pong France, ito po yung sa Cebu, BRT, bus rail transit yun, no?
Yes, rapid transit.
Rapid transit is 3.69%. And doon po sa, yun lamang po, yung China, Japan, and France. Yun po yung comparison doon pong mga interest rate na yun. So, we have in the central bank the so-called external debt sustainability program, which means that we make sure that there's no bunching up, that our debt to GDP, external debt to GDP ratio remains manageable. Now, what is the proof of the manageability of our external debt? 14 years ago, in 2005, our external debt to GDP ratio was 60%. So 60% of our GDP, if you translate that into simple terms, galing sa utang. Okay? Today, that 60% went down at the end of December 2018 to only 23.9%. Why? Because in the past, particularly during and right after the global financial crisis, we've been able to get so many capital inflows. We turned this around and we paid back many of these loans. In fact, for the Philippine government, through the Bangko Sentral, we prepaid all of our obligations with the International Monetary Fund in December of 2006. Both public and private debtors from the Philippines prepaid many of their obligations. In 2017 alone, more than $4 billion in prepayment was made. In 2018, I think up to about September or October, $2.7 billion were prepaid, both by the government and the private sector. In short, because the economy is growing, because the economy continues to gain traction, many of these corporates, including the Philippine sovereign, were able not only to pay back on time their obligations, the external debt obligations, but many of them, to be able to realize the savings on interest, decided to prepay. And that's the reason why we have seen all of this, the external debt to GDP ratio coming down from 60% to 23.9% as the economy continues to grow. I think I will stop right there and perhaps invite the others.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Butch.
Before we entertain questions, let's ask Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino to give his views on this issue. Then we'll go to Mr. George C. and Wilson Lee Flores. Let's limit maybe to around 10 minutes each. So afterwards, we can ask questions from any one of us. Anyone of us.
Magandang umaga po. Yung ating economic growth story, nabanggit po ni DG Diwa kanina, ay napakahalaga na ipagpatuloy. Yung ating growth story ay malapit na po tayo maging upper middle income country. At gusto talaga nating makamit ang high income country status by 2040. Ang palatandaan po ng high income country status ay zero extreme poverty at wala pong nagugutom na pamilya Pilipino. Yan po ang gusto nating makamit sa pagpapalago ng ating ekonomiya. Ang ating pagpapalago ay nakabase sa dalawang strategiya. Una, kailangan po ipagpatuloy natin ang ating mga investment sa ating infrastruktura. Dahil hindi lamang po dun sa malalaki na mga flagship projects na napag-uusapan po under the Build program, pero pati po yung mga libo-libong maliliit na mga proyekto sa bawat probinsya at lalawigan ng ating bansa. Yan po ay tuloy-tuloy na nangyayari ngayon. Although meron hong impact ng kaunti ang ating reenacted budget status for the first quarter of 2019 up to April of this year. So meron po talagang delay yung ibang mga proyekto na pang-infrastruktura. Ngunit weather permitting, now that we have an approved 2019 budget, we will work very hard on catching up on those numbers. Pangalawa, kailangan din po natin ipagpatuloy ang ating mga investment sa Filipino people. Yan po ay sa pamamagitan ng healthcare, education, at saka social protection. Yung atin pong healthcare law, yung universal healthcare law na pinirmahan ni Pangulong Duterte earlier this year, ay kailangan po talagang ma-implement ng lubusan at ang ating financing para sa universal healthcare ay kasama po sa ating General Appropriations Act sa 2019 budget. Pero gusto pa po natin gawing mas sustainable ang mga pondo para dito sa universal healthcare kung saan ang bawat Pilipino ay makakatanggap ng inpatient and outpatient services. Most importantly, sabi nga nila, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Ang universal healthcare law po natin ay nagsasaad na dapat ang bawat Pilipino ay may primary care provider. At yan po ay napakahalaga dahil ang malusog na populasyon ay isang productive population din. Sa education naman po, lubos ang mga effort ng ating Department of Education sa pag-implement at sa pagpapagaling ng ating K-12 system. At nandyan din po ang mga tulong na pinansyal para po sa higher education, para po doon sa mga gustong mag-aral pa past grade 12. So, ang ating pong estratehiya ay talagang pagandahin ang ating infrastructure program for logistics, for productivity, for efficiency. But not only because it's good for the economy, it's also good for the Filipino family. Dahil po alam naman natin, pag nasa traffic tayo ng 3 o 4 na oras sa isang araw, ayun po ay mga sandali na hindi natin kasama ang ating mga mahal sa buhay, ang ating mga anak. Minsan hindi na po natin sila nakakasama sa hapunan dahil naiipit po tayo sa kalsada. So we want to do it for the economy, but we also want to do it for the Filipino family. In the same way, yung healthcare po, gusto po natin na suportahan ang Department of Health sa pag-implement ng universal healthcare, especially at sa pagbalik po ng Kongreso sa May 20 by really pushing for the universal healthcare financing bill by raising sin taxes on tobacco and alcohol. So yan po ang priority over the next few months. At yun pong Chinese support sa ating ODA program, yan po ay kailangan maintindihan na ang konteksto niyan ay yung mga proyekto na sinusuportahan ay Filipino projects. Yan po ay mga proyekto na alam natin na kailangan natin. In fact, if you look at the history of many of these projects, matagal na po silang pinaplano. Ilang dekada na po ang ilan dyan, at ilang administrasyon na po ang sumubok na i-implement itong mga proyektong ito. Tulad po ng Chico Irrigation Project sa Hilagang Luzon, at saka yung ating Kaliwa Dam, no, secondary water source for Metro Manila and the surrounding areas. So first and foremost, these are Filipino projects. We need them based on our own estimation and our own assessment. At yan po ay talagang pinag-aaralan, nabanggit po ni Diwa kanina, doon po sa NEDA ICC, ay kailangan po pumasayan sa lagpas 10% economic internal rate of return. Samantalang, nabanggit rin ni DG kanina, na yung mga interest rate doon sa mga loan ay nasa 2-3% lamang. No? Pero yung economic internal rate of return, yung pakinabang po ng sambayan ng Pilipino dito sa mga proyektong ito ay kailangan lagpas 10%. So dapat talaga sulit ang mga proyekto at yan po ay sinisiguro natin. At magbebenepisyo po ang taong bayan. Pagdating naman po sa financing, hindi lamang China ang nag-offer po sa atin ng suporta. Nandyan din po ang Japan. In fact, Japan is the #1 bilateral lender. Napagit po ni DG Guinigundo na nasa 4.5% by 2022 ang estimate po natin on Chinese ODA, Chinese project loans relative to total debt. Ang sa Japan po ay mga nasa 9.5%. So higit doble yung ODA program natin with Japan. No? But I must emphasize that the ODA from Japan and China and even Korea, Korea offered us $1 billion in ODA support as well. Lahat po yan ay mababang sources ng financing. Kung ikumpara po natin yan sa private capital markets, or ikumpara po natin yan sa mga bonds na ini-issue ng Bureau of Treasury, ay mas mababa po ang interest rate na nakukuha natin sa ODA. But again, if I may emphasize, it is a source of relatively cheap financing for projects that we identify as beneficial to the national interest. Doon naman po sa mga paratang na yung mga provisions ng mga loan agreements ay magkakaiba. Ang pagkakaiba lang po niyan, in essence, ay kung ano yung mga wording. Although even then, you will find similar wording across different loan agreements. Pero may konting differences dahil po nag-uumpisa po tayo pagdating sa loan negotiation sa template ng lender. Whether it's the World Bank, whether it's ADB, whether it's JICA, Korea Exim, or China Exim, we start with their template. And then we adjust the language through the negotiation process. But the standard loan provisions, if we interpret the words carefully, ay makikita po talaga natin no, na wala pong out of the ordinary based on the effectivity of the provisions. In fact, kung yung pati po yung sinasabi na mayroong provision on confidentiality, yan po ay na-revise po natin through the negotiation process. The confidential clause in the Chinese loan agreements are subject to Philippine law. Yan po ang final wording na pag-agreehan po natin. At ang Philippine law ay nagre-require na kung humingi po ng kopya ang Filipino citizen ay maaari pong i-release. Kaya nga po ang Department of Finance, because there were several requests made already, ay within the law ay na-post po namin sa website namin ang lahat ng loan agreement na pinirmahan under the Duterte administration. At yan po ay pwede ninyong i-access at pwede pong i-download. At not only that, we also posted materials that explain the provisions and explain the comparisons among the loan agreements. So, ang sinasabi pong controversial na section ng mga loan agreements, yan po ay essentially standard provisions. Pangalawa, yung sovereign immunity waiver ay para lamang po sa arbitration at enforcement ng arbitration. Wala po tayong wini-waive na ibang bagay. Ang wini-waive lang po talaga natin ay pwedeng papunta sa arbitration kung hindi po tayo magbayad. At I think it is reasonable for any lender to expect that there would be such a waiver. And in fact, effectively, through a Supreme Court decision, any mention of an arbitral procedure in any loan agreement is tantamount to a waiver of sovereign immunity. And that is what we find in many of our loan agreements, not only with one country, but with all our bilateral lenders as well as multilateral lenders tulad ng World Bank, Asian Development Bank. Yung mga ruling o decision mula po dito sa arbitration ay kailangan pa rin dalhin sa korte ng Pilipinas at para ma-validate at para maging effective. At tulad ng nasabi ni DG Diwa kanina, responsable po ang pamamahala ng gobyerno sa mga utang ng Pilipinas. Nabanggit po niya yung debt to GDP ratio natin. Kailangan po ang level ng utang natin ay kaya po nating i-manage relative to the size of the economy. At so, kailangan po ma-interpret yung level ng debt relative to our economic growth. At yung 5.6% po for the first quarter, largely yung hindi po natin nakamit yung 6 and above, we came in below, was largely due to the reenacted budget of the first quarter. So we will do our best to catch up, weather permitting, especially on the infrastructure front. Siguro huli po, yung ating kakayanan na mag-manage ng ating utang ay nabigyan po ng affirmation dun po sa pag-increase, sa pag-upgrade ng ating investment grade credit rating mula sa Standard & Poor's kamakailan lang. Yan po ay mula sa BBB, tayo ngayon ay nasa BBB+. We are at the same level as Thailand in terms of creditworthiness, one step away from Spain and Malaysia, na nasa A-. At ang BSP po ang nangunguna sa ating road to an A rating within the administration. So yan po ang gusto talaga natin makamit. At para po makamit yun, una, ang sabi ng Standard & Poor's, isa sa mga pinaka-respetadong credit rating agencies sa mundo, one of the big three, ika nga, no? Yung Standard & Poor's, Moody's, and Fitch's. Yung Standard & Poor's, doon po sa kanilang announcement na BBB plus na po tayo, BBB plus stable dito sa Pilipinas. Sabi nila, they look forward or they will be watching the progress of our fiscal reform program. Ibig po sabihin yan, yung ating tax reform program. They would see as a positive the passage of the Trabaho Bill, Package 2 of the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program. Positive po ang indicator niyan kung mabasa po natin yung Sin Tax Bill for financing universal health care, because not only are we investing in the health of the Filipino people, we are making sure we can pay for it on a sustainable basis into the future. Nandyan po ang package 3 on property valuation, at nandyan po ang package 4 on capital income taxation. So yan po ay i-monitor po nila. The more progress we make on our tax reform program, yung tinatawag na CTRP, Comprehensive Tax Reform Program, the better we will be in terms of our credit rating outlook and our road to A. Also, of course, being able to spend prudently but quickly on our infrastructure program. Yan ang sinabi ni DG sa isang press con kasama si Secretary Dominguez recently. Yan ang ating Catriona's World. Kung magawa po natin yan, yan po ang Catriona's World na sa beauty contest ng credit rating ay magdadala sa atin sa A- rating na atin pong gustong makamit. Not for the rating itself, but because of what it represents. That we are making the right investments and that we know that we are putting in place mechanisms in order to pay for them on a sustainable basis. Salamat po.
Okay, we've heard the views of two government officials. Now let's give the floor to representative of the private sector. Mr. George C. is the chair of the Trade and Industry Cluster of the Federation of Filipino Chinese Chambers of Commerce. Again.
Thank you, Butch, and to Manila Standard for this opportunity. Gusto kong ma-realize rin natin na itong gobyerno natin ngayon in the last, I don't know how many years, last more than 10 years now, the Philippines has consistently been considered among the best central banks in the world. No? And this is part of the tulong nila Mr. Guinigundo at sila Lambino ay mga napakagaling na mga public servants natin dito. No? Sa role ng Federation of Filipino Chinese, kami ay gusto namin ipa-intindi sa mga tao. We are Filipinos. Our ancestors are Chinese, Filipinos tayo. And so our loyalty and ganyan is to the Chinese. And we are trying to help promote the country and protect the country also. No? So it doesn't matter kung kausap natin ay galing sa anong bansa. We want to promote our country and we also want to protect our country. Ang sitwasyon natin ngayon ay we are in a very unusual situation because ngayon is the best time ever in the last maybe 40, 50, 60 years of Philippine history. No, the growth is the fastest. It's consistent. There's no the issues that are bothering us are not as violent as at certain times, and the interest rates are lower than they have ever been. No, so this situation is what should we do as a country and as individuals to take advantage of this, so that not only the country progresses, which is due to our economic managers helping us, pero paano naman makikinabang ang pangkaraniwang tao? So this is the view of what the Federation wants to do to help. So what do we do in this regard? No, we try to we try to explain to people how to take advantage of the situation. We have trainings. We create accesses to people, and we help government in terms of the negotiation of the legislations and in the trade agreements and the loan agreements to some extent if we are asked. No, we also try to promote the country. Now, but there are certain difficulties if you understand. No, one is no matter what we negotiate, we have to utilize it. That means we as Filipinos must want to take that business. What is the category of that business na dapat natin pasukan at paano tayo makikinabang dyan? Kasi pag tayo ay complain ng complain at puro politiko, then you don't complain about other people becoming wealthier and they're not taking advantage of the situation. Now, a few very important fundamental issues to look at, no? That in the Philippines, everything about China ngayon, every day sa dyaryo tumitira. No? I want to explain a few things. No? Number one, let's see, recently, the US has not told other countries not to buy goods from China. They have been telling countries all over the world not to buy 5G. the new technology. Why is this so important? Because this is where the future power is going to be. So ang labanan is not really a trade war, it's really a war for supremacy of the next generation of technology. Sa Philippines, we tend not to lead it, so kaya hindi tayo masyadong concerned, hindi natin pinaconcerned. But let's see, even though they told their allies in the EU to not buy Chinese 5G, but in the last 3 months, Germany said they are going to deal with China, England said they're going to deal with China, and Italy said they're going to deal with China. The reason we're saying this is that they are making independent decisions, and we should be making independent decisions as well on how we're going to take advantage of this. So now our economy is growing. We know that in trade, for instance, the easiest thing to do in terms of economy for the average person is trade. No, all over the world they are now buying our fruits. It started with China. They swiped out all our fruits. No, we had more than double the volume in just the last 2 years. No, and we are not producing enough. Are there more people investing in agriculture? Now, if we're talking about tourism, the next fastest one, kasi in agriculture, matagal pag magtanim ka, who are planting in agriculture? We have to revise our legislative agenda. So, Federation is trying to say, because if we keep having this land reform and the farms are 1 hectare now, 5,000 meters, who is going to plant and make, but let us say that in terms of trade, no, we just got this information from the Department of Trade, no, Vietnam and these countries have increased their trade by more than 5 to 10 times. No, they are talking about tens of billions of dollars of exports, and we are talking only 1/10 or less of that. Our graph is the flattest. It will go like this. Our neighbors are like this. Vietnam is like this. No, so that is we weren't able to bring the material. So that is one thing we can do. But if we don't do the legislations on the agriculture, then we can do it. Let's say on tourism. But tourism, the gestation time takes about. If you're building a hotel, it takes at least 3 years. But then you can take advantage of that if your child is a tour guide, or you have a little home that you can rent out. So it's a very inclusive type of industry. We want to promote that. But if we keep on attacking in the newspapers every day, everything, let's put some perspective into that, no? Because there is no growth that is historically a straight line. It always fluctuates. So our relationships with whether it's the US, Japan, or Iran, hindi naman straight and nothing is perfect. If we start a new business, even Filipinos, we start our own business, we started in America, we started here. Not all the papers are there, but to say that there are Chinese-only restaurants in ganyan, we have been asking for any evidence. There is not one single one that they have been able to prove. So it's total nonsense. That some of them have, a lot of them don't have complete papers, it's true. Then let's complete the papers. It's not worth it to get it. Now, there's legislation on whether people should be having this level of business na itong mga tindahan ito. But note that, 30 years ago, we had all these Japanese places all over Rojas Boulevard. The elders, that we had Australians all over Ermita. And nobody's complaining. And then we have Koreans, it's now 1.5 million maybe residents here who shouldn't be here, but they're adding to the economy. So we can correct as we go. We're saying we correct as we go. Why? Because even the countries that are technically at war with China, Taiwan, Japan, ganyan, are taking advantage of the relations. So today's world, hindi na yan puro politika. Economics, trumps politics. So, maski na may disagreement tayo, kung pwede tayo makinabang, kung may away ko sa'yo, pero pwede ako makinabang, let's continue to do that, no? So, ang sinasabi natin ngayon, ang gusto natin is market accesses. Market accesses where DTI is negotiating for that, Bureau of Promotion of Trade and so on. Pero, ano naman ang gagawin natin para tayo ay makikisakay sa itong sitwasyon na ito? No? Who are investing? Who do you know that is investing? If we're leaving it to foreigners to do that, we cannot complain. No? Whether it's producing manufactured goods or it's producing agricultural goods or producing services. Yung services are the easiest thing for us to do. But of course, we have to have friendly relations. If we're talking about manufacturing, very important itong relationship with China because they are providing to us financing to build this infrastructure. This infrastructure, we're talking about both physical infrastructure, because if you are putting up a factory, and it takes you, your trucks can only go one delivery a day. 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours unloading, lunch break, and then afternoon 2 hours to come back. You cannot go out again. No? And then there is the truck down period. But the other countries having 2, 3, 4 deliveries a day. So paano tayo makikinabang dyan? No? Ourselves, our workers, if they take the ride averaging 2 hours one way, 4 hours a day is already lost. So instead of learning technology and learning the newest technology, and this is very important, we are not preparing for that. These new technologies that will allow us to enter the service economy. Dahil dumadating na yung AI at robotics, hindi pa lang kumakama sa Pilipinas. Pero sa US, marami na, siya nang naglilinis ng mga hotel, at siya na rin ang, they are also the ones that are answering the phones and answering your emails and so on. And it's already beginning here. One of my accountants is working in a company that had 50 accountants, but now it's down to 28 because they're using AI. It's beginning. Kaya lang, nasasapawan pa rin ng bigger need because let's say countries like the US, they're still needing lower cost services. So we have to manage these transitions, we have to work together. And the Federation, we're trying to give these trainings and accesses. But you know, our experience is the interest level, there needs to be a culture of engineering. Because Philippines is the most number of hours using Facebook and these, but almost all of it, internet. Most number of hours, but it's almost all on socialization, showing your food, and they're not using it to learn, they're not using too much of it for business, but I know that some are beginning to. In the provinces, I've seen the tour guides, I asked them, paano kayo nagkakahanap? But you come from Manila, you're coming here, no, to the province. And they say they just market on Instagram and they get. There is good, there is bad. The key is to manage everything the same way in our life. No? And the Federation wants to help people do this. We want to work with you guys also for this. Thank you.
QUEZON, what can you add to this, to what's already been said?
Just short lang, no? Kasi ang tinanong ni Boss maganda, anong advantage ng Philippine-China economic relations? I will summarize lang based on mga tinanong ko mga negosyante. Sabi ng mga negosyante, kasi ang maganda sa nangyayari ngayon, for the first time in many years, noon, Philippine-China relations in economy, hindi masyadong malakas yung economic exchanges. Ang advantage nitong independent foreign policy natin, number one, nakikita natin, yung aid mula sa China, nagkakaroon tayo ng aid. Any country in the world, pag may, if there's a country na, if you're only allied with one power, one or two, usually daw, sabi ng mga tao, yung power that is already close to you, they will take for granted na hindi na kailangan ano. Now, because of independent foreign policy natin, we are close to all the big powers. Philippines is close to the US, China, Russia, Japan. So what we are seeing yung mga negosyante, there's competition now for Philippine ties. So lahat ng big powers are present in the Philippines now for economic aid, market aid. For example, lang yung Japan aid to the Philippines in the last 6-7 years noon, mas malakas during the time of Duterte because they see China as a competition for the Philippine market. So good news na sa Philippines. Isa pa sa tingin ng mga business people, tourism is one of the most exciting for Philippine-China relations. Not because Philippines or China are special, but because China is emerging as the largest source of tourism for all countries in the world. In fact, Japan and China, they had historic rivalry and World War II pa sila. But China is now the biggest source of tourism for Japan, for South Korea. Ang South Korea, ang tourist ng China to South Korea is 4.7 million a year. Sa Philippines, we have only almost 1 million. That is a dramatic growth in the last 3 years. Ang Japan and China, may history of war sila. Ang tourist ng China going to Japan is 7.4 million 2017. So, why did we say this? Kasi dapat mag-isip tayo in terms of the Philippines as competing with other ASEAN countries. Kasi ang nangyayari dito sa media, at saka sa social media, ginagawang malaking issue yung Philippine-China rivalry sa mga maliliit na isla. Pero ang bigger picture nito, yung ginagawa ni Finance Assistant Secretary Tony Lambino, ni Deputy Governor Guinigundo, ni President Duterte and others, great news yan, good news para sa economy natin. Kasi ang totoong kalaban natin dito sa ekonomiya, yung ASEAN neighbors natin, even Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. Ang Thailand, every year na China tourist nila, 11 million. Tayo, nag-1 million tayo, record high na yan. Ang China tourist going to Cambodia na napakaliit na bansa is 1.2 million a year. Ang going to Indonesia 2 years ago, 2017, 1.9 million din ng tourists. So, what we are seeing here is the Philippines can become the next Thailand. Ang Thailand, 11 million China tourists, total of 30-40 million tourists a year. So sana ang mangyari, hopefully, sila Deputy Governor Guinigundo, si Mr. Lambino, and all the other officials, na sana hopefully the business sector ng buong Pilipinas, we could be ready for the coming tourism boom. It's not only China, of course, kasi with the new airports coming, with all the infrastructure na ginagawa nila because of the Belt and Road participation ng Pilipinas, we have the new bridges, everything. This means more tourists for us, more exports also. Sana kung may time tayo lahat, yung mga last trip sa Beijing, the Federation was part of the business delegation to the Belt and Road. Pumunta ako sa mga supermarket sa kalsada, sa markets. Pag may nakita akong mga saging, saka pinya, tinatanong ko, saan galing yan? Where are these from? Proud na proud yung mga tindera, hindi nila alam taga-Pilipinas ako. Uy, taga-Pilipinas yan, maganda yan, masarap yan. May saging pa na pula, may pulang saging. Sabi ko, where is this from? Philippines. Ba't wala akong nakikita sa Manila niyan? Sabi ko, ano yan, mas mahal o mas mura? Yung pulang saging ng Pilipinas, mas mahal daw kaysa yung mga dilaw. Sabi ko, ba't konti na lang? Yan ba konti na binibenta nyo? Hindi, kasi mas mahal, mas mabenta daw dito. So, ang kwento sa akin, tinanong ko yung mga kaibigan ko na banana exporters, nakalimutan ko yung amount. Ever since the President has normalized Philippine-China relations, naging normal, hindi naman tayo special close, hindi naman tayo sinanda sa China o anyone. Naging normal lang like before. Ang sabi ng mga banana exporters sa akin, we now export several $100 million a year pa. Alam nila the numbers. And ang problema nila ngayon, ng mga Mindanao exporters ng saging, ang problema, they could not cope with demand. There's not enough bananas being exported. Cambodia daw and other ASEAN neighbors na competitors natin are even now, right now daw, clearing forests and other lands daw to do more bananas. And narinig ko pa from the banana exporter daw, during the time that we politically quarreled and argued with China, nawala yung banana exports natin in those years. And then nakapasok daw ang Ecuador. Ecuador, halfway around the world, na walang export noon sa China market, ngayon they have a foothold na in that market. So yun ang request ko lang and the other business people, sana we look at the Philippines as a basketball team, parang sa Olympics. Ang kalaban natin hindi China. Our competitor are our next door ASEAN neighbors. Our direct competitors are Thailand, Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, including Vietnam. Whatever history they have about politics, ang importante in the world today is economic competition. How to make the economy better, how to make the businesses better. Ang karamihan ng members ng Federation ng Filipino-China Chamber of Commerce, majority, small and medium enterprises all over the Philippines. So, in terms of the economy, what's happening now with Philippine-China normalization of relations is good news for the economy. And hopefully, with enlightened officials like Governor Guinigundo and ASec Lambino and all the others, hopefully we will depoliticize our economy and our diplomacy. Ibig sabihin sana, wag lahat ng bagay sa Pilipinas may politika. Ang importante yung economic competition with our neighbors. So this is good news what they are doing and the cooperation.
Okay, we've heard the views of government and the private sector. We'd like to open the floor for questions for any one of our guests. Again,
Good morning. These loans are dollar denominated. How is the process of lending this money for the use of this infrastructure program? Will it ultimately land in the hands of private enterprises who will implement these projects? And if ever they will be the end users of these amounts, will there still be sovereign guarantee to this institution, to these private companies, guaranteeing them of their desired income, even if they lose in the process of their business?
Normally, like the last funding exercise that we did with Bangko, we can get the renminbi and then, of course, exchange that for pesos because you cannot use renminbi to fund economic activities in the Philippines. So, kasi dito sa atin ngayon, meron na tayong trading platform that would allow us to convert directly from renminbi to pesos, pesos to renminbi. In the same way that we have a trading platform between the US dollar and the Philippine peso, diretso. Okay? Japan is also exploring that possibility of having a trading platform that would directly convert the Japanese yen to pesos and pesos to the Japanese yen. This one. Second, kung merong loans, wala akong mga sovereign guarantee yan. Depende yan doon sa klase ng project o kaya ng programa na papasukan nila. Kasi normally may mga solicited project o kaya unsolicited. Pagka solicited, it's the government that brings this out for bidding, tapos they will compete. Kapag naman unsolicited, they have their own project, they present that to the Philippine government at this price, let's say $X. But that is subject to the Swiss challenge. Swiss challenge means other providers or other proponents of the same project can challenge that and offer it at a lower cost. So, ganun ho yung sistema natin. At ang ating bidding process, these are all governed by government procurement rules and regulations to ensure that the Philippine government gets the best terms and conditions in the execution of those public works projects.
So yung practice natin ng sovereign guarantee to our infrastructure contractors, like for example, MRT 3, no? Hindi na natin gagamitin yung practice na yan.
Depende ho yung kasi sa pero normally wala na ho tayong mga sovereign guarantee. Nagkaroon ho tayo ng problema, I think 1992, when we had a 14 to 16 hours of brownout. And we had to immediately address this issue of power failure. Diyan ho pumasok yung mga power barges. At yung pagpasok ng power barges, because we were forced to address our power failure problems, ginarantyahan pati yung mga issues ng rate of return. Dahil kung hindi naman gagarantyahan, wala naman tayong kuryente. That was in 1990. I think 91, 92, until such time that we were able to put order in our power industry. Diyan na pumasok yung yung isang, na pumasok yung napocor, and then yung transmission of energy. And then later on, in the late 1990s, we started to deregulate the power industry. So we privatized the assets of napocor. Some, PISAM was established to manage precisely the assets and the liabilities of napocor. We also privatized the transmission of energy. Ganun ang nangyari nun. Pero today, we're not exactly in the same situation as we were in the 1990s. We have choices, basically.
Follow-up question lang, no? Since these loans will be more or less dollar denominated, no? Though it may happen that you will have a direct with renminbi, no? Direct exchange with renminbi. Still, this will be computed on the basis of the value of the peso against the dollar. What is
Diretso na nga ho yun eh.
diretso na?
From peso,
How about if
renminbi to peso.
how about po if
Kung ang magiging ay renminbi, depende ho kasi yun sa loan contract eh. Kung ang loan contract in renminbi, and the money will be coming in as renminbi yun. Tapos diretso ngayon yun sa bangko ang conversion between renminbi and peso.
halimbawa dumating yung
Linawin ko lang po kung okay lang. In terms of the currencies, dun po sa 9 loan agreements na napit-sign, yung sa Chico River Pump Irrigation Project at saka yung Kaliwat Dam, yan po ay nasa US dollars. Yung improvement of remaining sections along Pasig River, Cavite Industrial Area Flood Risk Management Project, Metro Manila Subway Project Phase 1, North-South Commuter Rail Extension Project, ito po lahat ay JICA loans. In Japanese yan po yan.
no?
Yung Pangil Bay Bridge Project at saka yung New Cebu International Container Port, yan po ay nasa Korean one. Galing po yan sa, yan po ay loan sa Exim Bank of Korea. At yung Metro Manila BRT, yan po ay nasa US dollars sa World Bank and Clean Technology Fund, yung lenders.
Iba-iba po, no? Pero at the repayment time, halimbawa 1 year after, no? Nagbago ang dollar peso exchange. Siyempre, maapektuhan din yung yen loan natin, maapektuhan din yung Korean loan natin, ano? Ano ba ang prospect na ang ating dollar peso ay mag-improve considering na maganda ang prospect ng economy natin ngayon? Ngayon, 52 plus ang ano, no? It will benefit us kung bababa ang halaga ng dollar. Dahil at the repayment time, medyo may percentage tayo of advantage. Ano po ba ang chances natin na bababa yan ng from 52 to lower, no?
Alam po na nyo kung alam namin ang sagot dyan. Wala na kami sa gobyerno. Well, anyway, everything is subject to both fundamental and non-fundamental factors. Kung fundamental po ang ating pag-uusapan, meron na po tayong basihan o batayan para sabihin na mananatiling matataag ang palitan ng piso laban sa dolyar. I mean, the economy is growing, inflation has been coming down, public finance is very strong. Yung pong ating external payments position for the first quarter of the year. Ang balance of payments po natin is around $3 billion surplus. Yung pong ating banking system naman ay tatag. So, kung pag-usapan lamang yung pagtingin ng mga nag-i-invest sa Pilipinas at saka yung mga traders ng piso, ng dolyar, laban sa dolyar, sa peso, etc., wala akong dahilan para humina ang piso laban sa dolyar. However, there are also non-fundamental factors. Sentiment-driven po ang foreign exchange market. This is very sentiment-driven. Magkaroon lang mo ng bombahan, kunwari sa Turkey o kaya sa Paris, nagre-react agad ang foreign exchange dito sa Pilipinas, where we are thousands and thousands of miles away, nagre-react ang foreign exchange market. Bumanat lang si Trump against China, nagre-react ang market. So yung non-fundamental factors na yun, that is very difficult to predict. So kailangan po dun sa ating budget assumption, yung assumption po sa budget, is a very wide range from 52 to 55. Yung po ay hindi natin target. No? Let me clarify and stress that this is not the target of the central bank. This is not the target of the national government. It is just an assumption, 52 to 55. It's a wide range precisely because of the difficulty in forecasting what the dynamics will be that would determine the exchange value of the peso against the US dollar. But one thing we can be sure of, because we have an elaborate system of managing our external debt, we look at the tenor, we look at the terms and conditions, we can be sure that in the next 10 to 20 years, based on the information that we know today, our external debt is going to be very, very manageable. Earlier, I cited the number of 23.9%. This is the ratio between external debt and GDP. Yung po ating utang versus yung ating kinikita taon-taon. Noong pong 2005, 14 years ago, ito po ay 60%. Ngayon, nasa 23.9% na. So habang bumababa yung external debt to GDP ratio, mas mabuti po yun. Kasi hindi natin kinakailangan kukunin sa ating kinikita yung pong ating ibang babayad naman sa ating pagkakautang mula sa labas.
Dagdag ko lang po na that is why it's important, given that this cannot be predicted to 100% accuracy, that we have diverse sources of financing. That's why we have a portfolio of loans from different countries and in different currencies. At pangalawa, kailangan din po siguro i-emphasize na ang ating national debt ay nasa 7.8 trillion, more or less. Pesos. But the size of the economy is larger than 18 trillion pesos, which means we can really manage that debt. And of the 7.8 trillion, yung sinasabi ni DG Diwa, yung external debt natin ay around 34%. Yung ating local debt ay nasa mga 66% compared to what we owe abroad. At para naman po dito sa Build program, yung target po ng gobyerno for the total financing of this program is 66% from the national budget. So we will pay for most of it ourselves. 18% from public-private partnerships for the people, and 15% official development assistance.
Kaya ko lang po natanong yun dahil I still remember in the past nagkaroon tayo ng Asian currency crisis na talaga nagpabigat ng ating economy. No? We borrowed in terms of dollar. No, magbayad tayo, naka-float na ng gusto ang ating peso. So hirap tayo. Ang utang natin, pinahirapan tayo ng gusto. Ano ba ang anong solution ng... Opo, sige po.
Mabigyan ng konting input, no? Tama ho kayo, itong nung nagkaroon ng Asian crisis ay nagkahirap tayo. Yung interest rates moved up to 32-33%. Before that, yung Jobo bills under IMF World Bank, hindi yan under China. The interest rates moved up. But they coursed it through the local banks, went up to 45%. They foreclosed and they asked all these companies how to be closing, no? But baka you were too young to remember that time. So maraming mga, but the important thing actually from a business and maybe from a country viewpoint, no? The country will always negotiate for the best terms. The businessman doesn't think that way. As long as your returns are better at a manageable risk than the project. So ang importante ay productive yung project na pinasukan natin. No? So if our project is making 16%, it really doesn't matter if we make 2 or 3% ang loan natin. So ang kailangan hinahanap natin. Pero that means that we have to be productive. Anong ibig sabihin sa agriculture? Right now, Dole just invested, dati Philippines ang mainland, we just invested in Vietnam. And then tamang sinabi ng kasamahan natin na Southeast Asia, they're taking down all these plantations, putting into banana and coconut ngayon. magko-compete sila. And South America has got dati less than 5% siya sa Korea at Japan, but now they are more than 10% na. Nakapasok sila dahil sa nung nag-aaway tayo, nakabenta sila, nasubukan. So there are a lot of things we can do. The same, if we build this infrastructure of the rails and the roads, what will our people use it for? Of course, we enjoy it, we have more time, but are we going to use it to produce more, or are we going to use it to consume more? We have to increase the proportion of our production of goods and services in relation to our consumption. Ito ang pinaka-importante.
Thank you very much, po.
Okay, well, time siguro for one or two questions. Sige.
Sir, for ASec Lambino, sir, I'm Ron sir, of QUEZON News, Japanese news agency. With the president having just arrived from the Belt and Road Forum, can you please enlighten us, sir, on how the Philippines, in concrete or actual terms, benefit from the BRI? Is it in the form of, or have we benefited already since the president attended the first forum in 2017? This was the second time. So meron na ba tayong benefit or papapasok pa ba? Or then will it be in the form of loans, grants, investments? Can you educate us on that?
Ito pong Belt and Road Initiative is really a connectivity initiative. It's market access from Asia all the way to Europe. Po yan, through land and through sea. Through, yes, yung Maritime Silk Road na tinatawag. Yan po ay makakabuti sa atin as we improve our own infrastructure and our own connectivity through the Build program. So what we will really benefit from is the resonance between these two programs. You have regional and cross-continental connectivity that's being put together. One of the most exciting ideas in decades, no, in terms of building up the infrastructure in a given region or across regions. But at the same time, we're preparing for that, and we are making ourselves ready for all of that connectivity by making sure our own logistics capacity is improved. Sabi nga po ni George at saka ni Wilson, for our SMEs, we really need to improve infrastructure and logistics capacity because cost component of any business is transportation. So we want to reduce that cost for our own small and medium enterprises as well as our large businesses, no? And improve the linkages in the value chains. One of the big components of making that happen is improving logistics. At siguro, maganda rin na may market and trade access efforts ang Chinese government. Katambal po ng Belt and Road ay ang kanilang mga trade forums na hino-host. No? They'll be doing one later this year, we heard. And essentially what they're asking members of the BRI and other countries is what products would you like to offer to the Chinese market? So they are also making efforts to increase access to their own market, and we should be ready for that. We should produce more bananas. We should produce more mangoes. We should be improving our agricultural productivity. As you see from the GDP numbers, the agricultural growth is lackluster and anemic, at 0.8% for the first quarter. We really need to improve that because there are many opportunities that will come from the increased connectivity in the region, all the way from Asia to Europe.
So is it more of a spirit of connectivity, of being able to participate in that connectivity, or is it also, there's also a chance for Philippines to tap BRI funds that we can utilize to improve like infrastructure to get source funds from the BRI to implement infrastructure projects and link it with the BRI connectivity?
As far as I know, the BRI is not a financing arrangement. No? There is the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank that supports a lot of BRI projects. but they co-finance with ADB and other lending institutions, JICA, I think, and some others. So my understanding is, in terms of financing, we do have the generous support of our regional bilateral partners, Japan, Korea, and China in recent times. The connectivity is what the BRI stands for, in enhancing trade, tourism, and investment through better connectivity. Yung sa financing po ay talagang we evaluate each project based on our own interests and needs, and we evaluate the best terms of financing for each of these projects.
I think those BRI, it provides the framework for establishing that belt and road initiative. So everyone will know his own particular role in the establishment of that initiative. Now, it reminds us of the old Silk Road that connects Asia to Europe. And that actually was the motivation behind the increased trade and investment relationship between Asia and Europe at the time. So now this is being replicated on a larger scale. But as ASec Lambino was saying earlier, we need to find ourselves in the general scheme of things of the BRI. How can we take advantage of that BRI if we ourselves are not interconnected? We have 7,000 islands, and that's one of the focuses of the build, to be able to establish interconnectivity between and among the major islands in the Visayas and particularly in Mindanao. That's one. Second, the funding does not come from that initiative. The funding comes from the AIIB, which is focused on infrastructure funding. But again, this is co-financing is established with the Asian Development Bank and other lending institutions. That's the second point. The third point is, in the interest of diversification, the Philippine government as well as the ASEAN are also diversifying our trade relations. We have the RCEP. This is the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. This is between ASEAN and the other 6 countries. You have India, you have New Zealand, Australia, plus our 3 dialogue partners. That means China, Japan, and Korea. Now, there is, on the basis of RCEP, market access is being enhanced, and liberalization of trade is a part and parcel, in fact, the pillar of this RCEP. On top of that, the ASEAN is also pursuing bilateral free trade agreements. So you have ASEAN and China, ASEAN and Hong Kong, and ASEAN and the other countries in that RCEP, which will actually result, or is expected to result, in higher merchandise trade, better investment, and I'm sure this will benefit us and diversify our sources of trade and investment. Kailangan ho kasi talaga, yung sinasabi kanina ng ating mga kaibigan, meron tayong problema sa China in terms of territorial disputes. But that is something that can be pursued on the diplomatic front. Meanwhile, hindi ba ibig sabihin nun, ihihinto na natin yung ating economic, trade, and investment relationship, not only with China, but with the rest. And that's the essence of a multilateral platform or multilateral basis of trade and investment dito po sa pandaigdigang relationship between and among countries.
You've been citing all the benefits that we can get from enhanced cooperation with China, but at least 2 surveys have shown that majority of Filipinos distrust China. How would you reconcile this? Are we doing enough to attract, to change the perceptions of Filipinos towards China?
we hope we can ask the help of media to educate Filipinos, because actually if you look at the records, no, both in the Spanish time and in the American time, their policy advisors have said that don't ever let the Chinese and Filipinos become close friends. Always keep them apart because they're afraid of the power. So you can find it in the records of the Spanish and the Americans. If we look at the Silk Road, Philippines was always part of the maritime Silk Road. This Silk Road is such that you have to understand what a road is. Whether you participate in it or not, all you have to do is let it pass through your area. At yayaman ka dyan. You become a part of the road. It's better to be part of a highway than not to be part of a highway. So the richest countries and empires in the world for 500-700 years were part of the Silk Road. Just because it passed through Turkey and Persia and Venice, these became the richest parts of the world. No? And dahil sa, it is because of the jealousy of the Europe that the Turks were becoming so rich, because everything goes through the Middle East, that they started doing the Portuguese and Spanish route around para they can bypass the Turks. And then when they became rich, then England decided they want to join the game. And later, US decided they want to join the game. So in the Philippines, what were the richest parts of the Philippines and the center of the Philippines before? It was Sulu and Butuan. All the gold was there because these were part of the Silk Road where the Chinese bring their goods and the Hindus and Arabs come there, and all the Sulu and Butuan people did was they were in the middle, they were the merchants. So we were already part of the Silk Road, and the galleon trade that we are so proud of, people may not realize 95% of it was Chinese goods. No, and that galleon trade was the richest trade in the world because that provided half of all the budget of Spain. No? So that made people fabulously rich.
Through Mexico.
Through Mexico, that's right. So naging history. So the question now is, what are we doing? Because a lot of people, when they think of BRI, Belt and Road now, they're thinking of the physical infrastructure. Obviously, we are not in the main part because we're off on the islands. But the BRI, as stated here, it's a connectivity. It's no longer just, the richest trades and monies and all the greatest fortunes are no longer in physical goods. If you look, they're now in entertainment and in software items. So the Philippines, how do we become part of that? If we cannot deliver straight to the Central Asia, Middle East, and to Europe, but going to China, we go to it. So there's a process of harmonization that is taking place. What we want to happen, we want to be part of that, is the logistic infrastructure, even if we're not physically connected, that our ports are operating efficiently. Our terms that we are using, the standards we are using are those that comply. The equipments and the rails and the cars that we are using are easy to put in. But even more than that is the digital infrastructure, which is already starting. Our biggest seller now is Lazada. Lazada is part of Alibaba. But what products are we going to produce? What services are we going to produce? We don't have to concentrate on the Silk Road. Let's do what's good for the Filipinos. So the most important thing is, ano ang gagawin natin? Because we keep talking, we're a very political country. All those people who are writing and criticizing, you ask them what job they have generated, what they have produced, wala yan. Sigurado wala yan mga main critics, wala yan pinaproduce. So we have to look at this. So this is how we participate. We have to immerse. So immerse in learning from Steve Jobs, from Elon Musk. It doesn't have to be from anywhere in the world. And then we produce goods and services that we course through this logistic super highway that is being created.
Sige, we have time for only one more question.
For both Diwa or ASec, just to give us a picture of our debt with China. The total external debt, how much is from China? Ilang percent?
Sabi ko na kanina, out of 79 billion, 980 million as of the end of 2018. 520 million short-term, 416 medium and long-term. Ngayon, kung ipapasok yung mga nasa pipeline, I think what was quoted was about 4 to 5% by 2020. So out of, let's say, 79 billion, kunwari umakit ng mga 80 billion, by 2022. 4 to 5% lang yun. So 4% nun, wala pa siguro 1.3 billion or 2 to 3 billion ang magiging attribution sa China. Pero it's beyond numbers. I think what is more important is, do we assess or evaluate the terms and conditions? What about the interest rate? We were saying earlier that the interest rates are very much competitive and therefore comparable to other ODA loans that we have received so far. Second, there is no collateral or commitment of our national patrimony to support those loans coming from China, from Japan, or from other jurisdictions. Yung mga yan, long-term loans yan, lalo na sa Japan, 20, 30 years. So we have enough opportunity, we have enough time to be able to service those debts. Now, earlier, one of the principles cited by ASec Lambino is diversification. We are borrowing from China, we're borrowing from Japan, we're borrowing from Korea, and recently, we went back for the second time in the euro market. Because again, it's very difficult to be depending on the US market, let's say 90-95% of your loan requirements, only from the US. So, tinatap natin yung euro, yung US, Pandaman, that means China, and then Samurai, Japan. In that case, yung kanilang na-erase na baka naman nung pagkabubagsak o kaya umakyat ang dollar against the peso, tatawagan naman tayo, which would remind us of the Asian financial crisis. This may no longer be true. Why? Because we have a more diversified sources of funding, number one. Number two, our external debt to GDP ratio has really gone down. So the possibility of going back to what we experienced during the Asian financial crisis may be quite remote. And a very good proof of that is that during the global financial crisis, we came out of that crisis almost unscathed. In fact, from 1999 hanggang 2018, hindi tayo nagkaroon ng recession. Unlike other countries like the US, they went into recession for many years, even after the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2010.
Sir, yung 79 billion pesos po yan?
Dollars yun.
Sir, given the road to A minor, in how many years achievable?
Well, probably in about 2 years. Pero remember, this is not a goal in itself. There are two keys to an upgrade. The first key is sustain our policy and structural reforms. Those reforms are good for us. Whether there is a credit rating agency out there, whether the IMF or the World Bank are saying so, if we believe that these policy and structural reforms are good for us, good for our people, because that will sustain economic growth, that will result in higher employment opportunities, and make a dent in poverty alleviation, fine, let's pursue this policy and structural reforms. Now, these credit rating agencies are out there, they're evaluating our performance. If they see that our performance shows sustained commitment to those policy and structural reforms, then they give us an upgrade. But we're not just doing this for an upgrade. No. We are doing this because these reforms are good for us. Now, second, of course, is we really have to communicate our good story, our good narrative to this credit rating agency. And that's the reason why at every opportunity, whether in a meeting in ADB or IMF, World Bank spring or fall meeting, we'll engage these credit rating agencies to update them, to explain to them what are the latest legislations passed by Congress, what's the latest reading in terms of our output, employment, inflation. The more information we present to them, the more basis they would have in terms of appreciating what is going on the ground. And as a result of that, we get an upgrade. And we expect at least an A- in about 2 years. Of course, we want to make sure that we join the upper middle income countries based on World Bank and OECD classification. And if that happens, a pure single A or double A or in fact triple A is not impossible.
And there are two components to the reform program. First is getting the policies in place, and second, implementing them well. If you look at the trade law, in terms of its revenue target, it came in 2018 at 108.1% of target. So we need to make sure we keep implementing those policies well, so that it's not just because it came in at the level of revenue that it did, which is above target, but also because it allowed us to continue to make investments in infrastructure and social protection. Second, the credit rating upgrade is also good for the private sector. The access to credit when Filipino companies borrow money abroad, no? It's cheaper. The financing is cheaper, which means it's cheaper to expand operations. And our hope really is that Filipino people will have better jobs because of that, no? In the medium term. It's also important to note that foreign direct investment, no, is attracted to higher credit ratings. So there are foreign investors who only invest when you're B plus or higher or A minus or higher. So we want to attract more and more of that. Although BSP released some numbers yesterday, January and February, record high FDI in history, and higher by 20% compared to last year, the same period last year. Lastly, our bonds, the ones that we issue abroad, were already priced at A. Actually, if you look at the spreads, they're very tight, no, compared to the U.S. Treasuries. And so, the foreign markets already see us as an A. It's our job to make sure we, in fact, implement all of those reforms. And we continue on the reform program and the implementation of such.
Okay, we have we've run out of time, actually. We'd like to thank our guests today, Deputy Governor Diwa Guinigundo, ASec Lambino, George C. of QUEZON, Flores of Federation of Chambers of Commerce. But before we conclude, there's Anthony Castelo here. If you know him, he's a former singer, actually. And he wants to make an announcement before this.
Salamat po, kaibigan Butch. Napakaganda po namin lahat na China and Philippines cooperation started during President Duterte's term. Napakaganda po nito talaga. Ngunit ang lahat po ito ay mapapaliwala kung ma-assassinate ang presidente natin. Right now, there is a brewing assassination plot against the president and to unseat him. The assassination plot is, of course, the last option. But there is a group of, there are several groups engaged in independently working together to unseat him and leading towards the national elections. I heard of this from a friendly American from Washington, D.C. in December when I was in the United States. He told me, tell your president to watch his back, because there are groups working independently to unseat him, and there's an option to assassinate him. Tinanong ko, I asked him, who do you think would be behind this? From the United States and Filipinos back home in your country. So it's saddening. Kami sa Dakilang Life Foundation at sa Revolution Duterte, we are asking for prayers for the safety of the president and for the protection of our country. Sana po maging mapayapa ang ating darating na eleksyon sa Lunes. Kaya po, sana makapagpatuloy itong ating mga programa sa susunod ng 3 taon. Sana rin ang ating Pangulo, ipanalangin natin siya ng ating bansa. Salamat po sa pagkakataon ito.
Okay, thank you very much for coming, and thank you to all our guests, and for all those in here. We'll see you next Saturday for another episode of our news forum. Thank you.